All right, welcome back to Bet99's The Parleh Show. Rob Conway here, Albert Vartanian, and of course, Matthew Barnaby joining us from Ottawa. And nothing like a 40-degree day that wants you to talk about the NHL.
Little puck.
Little puck for sure. And the Leafs, we're in Toronto, let's be honest. The Leafs doing some moves. Brad Treliving putting his hands on this team a little bit. There's much more important business to attend to, that being the Nylander contract, the Matthews contract, and going forward. And we'll talk about that in a second. But, Barney, I wanted to get your first thoughts here. I mean, you look at a guy like Bertuzzi, one of the bigger free agents, I guess feels like with the cap going out, maybe wants to bet on himself. They're able to ink him. I think that's a really nice piece there. Boston probably is disappointed because they didn't want to give him term, and then all of a sudden they made moves and couldn't keep him. So Toronto was lucky there. Ryan Reaves, of course, a dressing room guy. Lots of questions in the city. You listen to talk radio, like, is he even going to play in the playoffs? And it's 3 years. He's 36, going on 37. And then Klingberg, who's a puck-moving defenseman, and fan favorite, I'm sure, Max Domi, the son of Ty. So lots of narratives for all four of those guys, Barney. Just your thoughts on those moves out of the gate for Treliving.
Well, if you look at Treliving and what he did day one versus Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh day one, A+ for Treliving. And
yeah, you like it, eh?
I do. When you see Reeves getting signed, I'm like, it doesn't really move the meter much. But you listen to Treliving, and it's a quiet group, he said. And, sometimes you bring in an energetic guy, a vocal voice, a voice that's respected, and a guy that's going to do anything for his teammates. Will he play in the playoffs? Listen, we'll see. It doesn't move the needle for me with that signing, but I think it's a great addition to the team. Klingberg had an off year. Here's a tall, rangy defenseman that can move the puck that, like I said, had an off year. But I think this is a really good situation, whether he plays PP1, where Morgan O'Reilly's been for years, whether he takes that over or he slides into PP2. And then I think when you put a footprint, or put your thoughts onto this team as a new GM, you have to look at not only being more physical in the playoffs, because we watched how Florida and Vegas went at each other shift after shift after shift. And it was a combination in Vegas having skill, being able to respond to the toughness, which I don't think Toronto could go further with the lineup that they had. But it has to be in the top 6 or top 9, not a guy in the bottom 3 or out of the lineup. So add Max Domi, who's a terrific competitor that played really well and has played really well in the playoffs the last couple of years in long runs, and Bertuzzi, who was seeking around $7 million in January, February on a 1-year deal with the cap going up if it works out. But I love these plays because I think they're a better team now than they were last year, just with the physical toughness of this team.
Yeah, and I like what Brad Treliving had to say. I think Leafs fans will too. He said, listen, we need to add some noise to this dressing room.
Yeah.
That's why he brings in Ryan Reaves. And Reaves says he takes that very seriously in organizing outings and bringing players together and making sure there's no cliques, because the reputation of the Leafs right now, locker room, is that it's pretty quiet. So
tight, I'm sure, very tight.
So maybe you bring in Reaves who's going to change that. So I don't mind that. Listen, he's going to play 9 to 10 minutes on the fourth line. They're not bringing him in for offensive production, right? They're bringing him for a bit of a fear factor. And listen, Treliving even said it. We need to add snot to our team. And he said something very interesting. He goes, as much as the games change, some things never change. And he was talking about the physical side of the game. The Leafs haven't had that for years. And now you're adding that in Bertuzzi, a guy who can do that and score. Domi, versatile guy who can play on the wing, play center at deals where they, want to prove themselves. I think that the deals have been pretty good, but like, most mentioned, there's still a lot to do. And I think as much as Matthews is at the top of that list, Nylander might be, the 1B to his 1A right now.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Barney? The idea of adding a bit of voice to a room. When I said tight, I don't mean close-knit, and they probably are, but I meant tight as in squeezing the stick a little extra hard in big moments, in big games, ahead of big games, just because of the history of what that team has accomplished or hasn't been able to accomplish. You've been in a locker room where you've had to be that guy that we all know you're fun and vocal and all that stuff. Have you been on a team where it's like, guys, relax. We know what we're doing here. We're a good hockey club. We don't have to worry about it.
In a different way. I was brought into Colorado. Now, I wasn't the voice that, with Joe Sakic and Teemu Solani, Peter Forsberg, Rob Blake, Adam Foote. There were so many guys that were able to talk. But in general, they were quiet guys. And we had guys like Jim Cummins and Peter Orwell that were tougher guys. But again, those guys weren't playing when we got to the playoffs. So I came in, and whether I played on the third line or played on the fourth line in a checking role, I had that personality and that kind of bring a team into a fight. Not that they weren't ready, but was ready every single time and kind of made it fun around the room. And that's exactly why I was brought into Dallas, because, Brendan Morrow's quiet. Mike Modano was quiet. Sergei Zubov, quiet. Great players. So when I went in there, I kind of have that same effect as a Ryan Reaves, to kind of energize the room and be the voice and talk. So I've been there before. I think it's essential. I hated playing on quiet teams, and I played on a few, and I tried to be, that guy. But I like this. I like the voice, and I like what Treliving had to say.
Barney, how difficult was it to go into a quiet dressing room and, as a new guy, turn up the volume a bit? Did you have some I don't know, pushback from other players that have been there longer than you?
No, not ever. Like when I went to Tampa, it was kind of a quiet room. Dave Andrechuk was our leader, and Brad Richards was a rookie. Vinny Lecavalier, these guys were really, really young. Marty St. Louis was just coming into his own, so I never got pushback. You do it in a fun way, but you also do it in a respectful way, and you're never. There is times you have to call guys out, and sometimes you have to call yourself out, whatever it may be. But it's in a fun, loving way. So I think guys have always appreciated it, had fun. And even when I went to Chicago, I think that was maybe, I don't want to say the only pushback, because that's not the right way. We had young guys that just didn't fall in line. And I don't want to bring their names up because I think it's, they were good guys, but they didn't understand we can have fun. We can have fun off the ice. But you got to come to work the next day. You have to come and lay it all on the line, whether it's practice, whether it's morning skate, whether it's the game. And I think that was the problem when I went to Chicago. And when I voiced my opinion, it wasn't why I was let go, because I ended up getting bought out from the Chicago Blackhawks. They just didn't think I could play at that level anymore. So that was fine. But I loved how honest they were. But that was the trouble in Chicago. We were ready to take that next step, brought in a lot of free agents, and I was a voice again brought in to Chicago. It just didn't work out. I really, truly believe it was because the guys couldn't separate partying off the ice to playing hard on the ice.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you want to go out and watch Noel Gallagher all night? That's fine. But you got to be ready to host the Parleh show the next day. That's just
play
the way
her,
she
right?
goes, right?
You're in bed by 9:45. It's great.
That's true. That's right. Thanks, Noel. We got a good night's sleep. That's for sure.
I do really like Bertuzzi.
I do. Yeah.
Like if you throw him on the top line, and I believe he's had a 30-goal season. Yeah, a couple seasons ago. Now, if he plays with Matthews and whoever's on that line, he's going to get his goals. In a 1-year deal where he has to prove himself. I mean, he has a bit of an injury history. Broke both hands. Those are block shots. You can't really do much about that. But you get a guy who I think is much better than Michael Bunting, but a very similar player, which I think that line needs.
He's way better, though. Way better.
Yeah. Carolina's done a lot of movement as well, and they're up in the running, if you will. If there was a deal ever to be done with Nylander, that Carolina is the rumor that they might have some interest there, and they've never really had a prolific goal scorer. Aho's great, but never really had one, and Nylander did 40. But if you're Brad Treliving, Barn, Albert, what's the next thing? What's the next thing you got to do? Is it you have to ink Matthews, get that done, and then figure out Nylander, or do you want to make a move with Nylander first and then see what Matthews has to say?
I think you're working on both at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just don't see Nylander being here. I see in no which way that he's here long term. There's no way to fit him in. If he believes he's a $10 million player, there's no room.
There's no room.
There's no room. Matthews is the guy. Got to get him signed long term, or again, the next couple of years, it's pretty flat cap. Then it's going to go up. But I just don't see how they fit in Nylander. I don't see, and I've said it for the last few months. As well as he played in the playoffs, he's probably got the most value because where he is. But now you couple it with a team that needs to sign him long term, and he wants $10 million. Maybe he can get it somewhere. Maybe he can get it somewhere. He's not a $10 million player.
No.
You don't think so? 40 goals, not 10. And he's not in Toronto because you can't afford him. But you don't. I think he'll get it somewhere.
The comparable is, I think, Timo Meier. But I'm with Barney too. Yeah, he thinks he's a $10 million player, and he'll probably get it. Not from the Leafs.
He's going to get it. It's just not going to be with the Leafs.
Yeah.
Listen, he's a hell of a player, but he's also very inconsistent. When I'm giving out $10 million, you better be damn consistent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll get into the rest of the NHL. We talk a lot of Leafs, but we got lots of other things to get to. But now, quick break here on the Parleh Show.